All right, guys, I hope this turns out to be a really useful video for everybody with some very helpful information. Now, I am going to eat just a little bit of mud on this one, but that's all right. I think it'll be helpful. So, as we talked about before, the plane was handling really, really well. Performance was great right up until we hit the dog days of summer and we started seeing temperatures in the high 80s and into the mid 90s. All of a sudden, the oil temperature is not maintaining as it should. So, what I'm seeing now is with the temperatures around 90 degrees or better, the plane is not tolerating any sort of climb before the oil temperatures start coming up. And I'll give you an example. I did about 5 laps around the pattern the other day, and the oil temperature became unacceptably high, and I had to land the airplane. In trying to do cross country, if I start climbing, let's say to a reasonable altitude, like 4,500 feet, by the time I get there, the oil temperature is very high, and it will come down slowly over time, but obviously it's not right. So having gone through all the usual checklists, we check the oil, we check the filters, we check the oil cooler, all the usual things that you would look for high oil temperatures. I went back to something that we talked about in a previous video. So in the two-place Sonics, there is a cutout in the cowling right here. And that cutout in the cowling is right in front of the oil sump. And multiple people have said that if you don't have this, the oil temperatures will stay up. Now, we previously added an opening down here, and although that ram air scoop was doing great throughout the winter, it's not maintaining the oil temperature now. So I made the cutout just to see what would happen, and sure enough, the oil temperature stayed cool. In fact, for the last 2 weeks, I've been flying around testing this situation, and no matter how hot it gets outside, I can keep the oil temperatures to about 180 degrees. Now, of course, we're doing experimentals here, and this situation requires experimenting. So I went through and systematically covered up one hole and then the other, and then I left them both open just to see what would happen, and the results are pretty interesting. First of all, I decided to cover up that previous ram air scoop that we made. And when we did this, we found that the oil temperatures maintained just fine. The cylinder head temperatures maintained just fine. The RPMs dropped about 100 from what I was getting with that hole open. So now we go ahead and we remove this one and we leave both holes open. In this situation, the oil temperature stays cool, the RPMs stay very high. However, the cylinder head temperature starts to come up. So in that situation, the negative pressure differential between the top and bottom cowling is poor, and we're not getting enough air over the cylinder heads. And then in the final situation, we covered up this hole with some tape, which is right where we were before. And in this situation, the cylinder heads actually stayed cool. The RPM stayed high, but the oil temperature starts to come up again, so we're clearly not getting enough air across the oil sump, and it's just getting too hot. So what's the bottom line here? Well, although the two-place Sonics recommends that little smile type cowl opening in front of the oil sump, that's not really in the description for the 1X, but I think it's a necessary item for the oil temperatures to stay cool. And what we saw was that that lower cowl opening I made had to be plugged in order for everything to work appropriately. So that situation does drop your RPMs just a little bit because you're not getting quite as much cool air directly to the air filter, but it's still well within the normal parameters for the Aerovee engine. My static RPMs are about 3,250, and I hit up to 3,400 when I'm in cruise, which is the maximum cruise for the Aerovee engine. The good news here is that even though we're now in 90-degree days, my oil temperature is staying cool, my cylinder head temperatures are staying cool, my RPMs are appropriate, everything seems to be running the way it should. And for anybody who's struggling with high oil temperatures, that may be part of your problem. So I hope this was helpful, and happy flying.